What is the military's role in the building of nations? What about the expansion of nations? Does Bitcoin have the potential to become a new and peaceful part of a country's arsenal? Find out in this video. The military today is not considered an important element of a society by the public. Why should it? If it represents bloodshed and fights that seem pointless and that have caused a lot of pain to society. Studying Bitcoin as a property defense system opens the mind and curiosity to explore the reason wars happen. Why, given the abundance of natural resources like oil and lithium available in Mexico, the nation hasn't become a world economic leader. You might have a similar point of view in your country of residence as well, especially if you are in a developing nation in Latin America or Africa, or if you live in a small country that has a lot of influence from superpowers like Russia, the US, or China. Throughout history, one of the reasons a country or empire has become a hegemonic power has been through what Jason Lowery calls the power projection game, which means the kinetic brute physical force of the military. This is important because if a nation doesn't project power properly, how can it defend its natural resources and its sovereignty from another nation? And more importantly, as individuals, how can we defend our property from being stolen or confiscated from a corrupt agent? Here's where the role of the state arises. Property is the mutually acknowledged exclusive relationship between an asset owner and any particular asset. As a relationship rather than any particular item, the essence of all property is informational. If property means who owns what, and life is the source of all rights, then how can we defend ourselves from a tyrant or a person that wants to steal our property? We want to have the assurance that the product of our daily life efforts that we gain through sweat, tears, and sacrificed time will be safe for ourselves and for our bloodline. Reliably storing, updating, and communicating information in this list is property's native application, and the limitation of this has been the need to trust and pay an authority to maintain this list and prevent falsification or duplication of its records. For centuries, this authority has been the government. The government is the entity that determines the rule of law on a community, and it uses the militia to project power and guarantee this property rights from being broken by imposing a cost to an attacker. When we look at history, the government has often ended being the actor imposing new rules and thereby violating these same property rights. In the US, this is protected from corruption by the Second Amendment that allows the people to form militias to combat the state if it becomes a bad actor for society. This concerns the protection of property rights within a self-organized state, but the same dynamics are true between states. This is where international conflicts come from and where the importance of the militia arises. The country has not enough military power to protect their rule of law, and sovereignty is at the expense of every other bigger nation's will that can take all their resources from them. Karl von Clausewitz, Prussian general and military theorist of the 19th century, stated, "War is merely the continuation of policy with other means." So to understand the importance of the military to have a hegemony, we need to understand why wars happen. As one of the most important classical strategic thinkers of history, he examined the nature of war and defined it with this trinity. First, war is made of the same blind natural forces of primordial violence observed in nature. Second, it contains the play of chance and probability that rewards creative spirits. And third, it is a calculated instrument of national policy used to solve political disputes. This means that the survival of the fittest, the creative spirits that are in the search beyond something greater than them and with a clear purpose to achieve it, are the ones that translated into governments, have become the superpowers that are influencing everything around them, because they have become the best at projecting power. Winning this brute force physical power game is not exclusively dependent on finding ways to amass larger quantities of power. It's also about finding different strategies for projecting power in increasingly more creative ways. And when we can't trust the judge because we don't respect their judgment, war is the judge of last resort, delivering incorruptible judgment and a very decisive ruling based on brute force physical power. This is the judge that has come in the rise and fall of civilizations and superpowers. And when new technology arises, the hegemony at power that rejects it suffers the consequences and falls apart. Let's go back to Constantinople, which was seen at the time as the ultimate metropolis, the ultimate object of desire, with the Ottoman Turks determined to capture it. We are in the year 1452. Orban, the engineer, an artillery expert, is working in Constantinople and goes to Emperor Constantine XI and his armies to offer them his newest invention, a dreaded weapon, a monster cannon using gunpowder to protect the city from outsider invaders. But the emperor ran out of money and couldn't buy it from him. So Orban went to the Turks, who couldn't reject it, and with a better salary, offered it to them. We are now on Easter Monday, April 2nd, 1453. A year later, the young Ottoman Sultan, Mehmed II, and his armies are in Constantinople to begin the siege of the city. The monstrous cannon constructed by Orban the engineer had to be hauled more than 100 miles to the besieged city. The largest cannon ever, 27 feet long, with the ability to shoot a 1,500-pound stone ball at the defenses of the beleaguered city, is now in position. With deafening thunder, the cannon fired. This weapon pounded the walls of Constantinople and eventually broke them down, allowing the Ottoman army to breach the city. The city of Constantinople fell on May 29, 1453, 8 weeks after the first siege, and the key to the Ottoman Turks conquering Constantinople was the cannon constructed by Orban the engineer, a professional artillery master. This is an important history lesson because the last innovation in power projection was nuclear weapons. We saw what they are capable of in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. If used, the outcome is mutually assured destruction of humanity, and the countries that have them became the new world superpowers that no one wants to attack, because the cost of it may be irretrievable. These countries are China, Russia, and the world superpower hegemony, the US. We have some other exceptions with nuclear weapons, but they don't have the influence of these three countries throughout the world. Yet, another power projection technology arrived in 2009. Satoshi Nakamoto built Bitcoin, a network with a cost function that brings a challenge to its miners to be able to create tokens we call Satoshis. By the proof-of-work mechanism, miners have to solve a challenge every 10 minutes to be able to validate Bitcoin transactions. And by doing so, they receive Bitcoin as a reward. Miners need to connect their computers like Antminer's S19 Pro to resolve a challenge similar to this one. They have 10 minutes to find the number of zeros from 0 to 80, and the first to find them gets the reward. When the Bitcoin network was released, miners started receiving 50 Bitcoins per block. That was mined every 10 minutes. Every 210,000 blocks, Bitcoin rewards will be cut by half, which happens approximately every 4 years until we reach the 32 halvings. Halving is the term referring to the Bitcoin rewards cut by half, which is expected to happen in the year 2140. We are now in the third halving, where miners are now receiving 6.25 Bitcoins per block. If someone wants to attack the Bitcoin network, he or she would need to have 51% of the electrical power currently used for mining Bitcoin. And if for some reason he or she has it, the Bitcoin network has another mechanism to impose a cost, the difficulty adjustment. This means that every 2 weeks, the difficulty of the challenge will change depending on the nodes or computers that are connected to the network, which doesn't even guarantee the attackers they would receive the same amount of Bitcoin every 10 minutes after 2 weeks. This 51% attempt to attack the Bitcoin network would take approximately $6.7 billion per year. The proof-of-work mechanism is imposing a cost to any belligerent agent that wants to corrupt the network. Using electrical power via their computers, they're using electrical brute force, physical power instead of kinetic, as our military gunpowder. So this is a continuation of the power projection game, but now in cyberspace, that is now protecting our pure digital property and energy we call Bitcoin. And miners are a continuation of our military power. The US has become the world's superpower hegemony through its military force and the use of its currency, the US dollar, as the world reserve money in the world. They managed to secure it after getting out of the gold standard in 1933 and following with the petrodollar system. After the US sanctions to Russia by taking them out of the SWIFT system, now every country is asking themselves this question: can I trust my savings in the banking system? If I go against any of these three superpowers, China, Russia, and the US, especially the last one, would I be thrown out of a financial system like the SWIFT as well? How can we protect our property and sovereignty from this superpower influence? By building our military kinetically and electrically, so we can impose a cost to any attacker that wants to inflict these rules. The power projection game is a natural law that has existed for millions of years and is now evolving, and now the US has to make a smart move if it wants to maintain its role as the most powerful nation in the world.